There is something people have never quite understood about you. When someone falls apart at 2 in the morning, you're the one they call, and you show up every time. You absorb their panic, their grief, their confusion, and somehow, inside all of that chaos, you become completely calm. You know exactly what to say. You hold the silence when words aren't enough. People call you strong, they call you reliable, they say they don't know what they would do without you. And you mean it when you smile, because this is the one thing you have always known how to do. But then something happens to you, not to someone you love, to you. And when you reach for the same steadiness, the same words, the same willingness to just sit with it, there's nothing there. A hollow space, a strange, uncomfortable silence where your own feelings should be. You can hold an entire person's world together, but you cannot hold your own. And you have never quite understood why, but psychology tells a completely different story. This isn't emotional strength without limits. This isn't just who you are, it is a pattern, a protective one. And there are 6 rare psychological traits that define people who can carry everyone's pain but their own. Once you understand them, you'll finally stop wondering what's wrong with you, because nothing is. Trait 1, your nervous system doesn't just understand other people's feelings, it feels them. You walk into a room and you already know, before anyone says a word, that something is wrong. Someone near you is anxious, and without knowing why, your chest tightens. Someone is grieving, and the weight of it lands on you like something physical. You don't choose this. It happens before thought, before decision, before you even register what you're picking up. Psychology calls this emotional contagion, the neurological process by which your nervous system literally mirrors the emotional state of the people around you. Most people experience a muted version of this. Your mirror neurons fire intensely, automatically, and without a natural off switch. The strength is extraordinary. You read rooms that others miss entirely. You sense what people need before they can name it. You offer comfort that feels precise because it is. It's coming from a place of actually feeling what they feel. The cost is that you're never fully separate from the emotional weather of the people around you. You carry what they carry, even when they've already put it down. But there is a trait that runs even deeper than this, and it explains not just how you feel others' pain, but why you keep reaching for it. Trait 2, caregiving became the language your love learned to speak. Here's where this starts. Not in adulthood, not in the relationships you chose, but earlier in a home where someone needed you to be steady before you were old enough to know what steadiness cost. Maybe it was a parent whose moods were unpredictable, and you learned very young that if you could sense the shift early enough, you could soften it. Maybe it was a sibling who needed protecting. Maybe it was simply a household where the emotional labor fell to you, because you were the one who seemed to be able to handle it. And so you learned something that felt like love, but was also survival. You learned that being needed meant being safe, that making others okay meant you were okay. Psychology calls this compulsive caregiving, a pattern that develops when a child learns that their value, their security, their place in the family depends on their ability to manage other people's emotional states. In simple terms, loving someone and taking care of their pain became the same thing in your nervous system, and it still is. The strength is that you love with your whole self. You don't give halfway, you show up completely. The cost is that you don't know how to receive what you so naturally give, because no one ever taught you that you were allowed to need what you spent your whole life offering everyone else. The next trait surprised me because it lives not in the mind, but in the body. Trait 3, you feel other people's pain somewhere inside your own body. This is the one most people never name. When someone you love is suffering, it isn't just an emotion you recognize, it's something you carry in your shoulders, in your jaw, in the tightness that settles somewhere between your chest and your throat. You leave a difficult conversation, and your body is exhausted in a way that has nothing to do with what you physically did. You absorb, not as a metaphor, as something physiological. Psychology calls this somatic empathy, the experience of registering another person's emotional or physical state as physical sensation in your own body. In simple terms, your body doesn't distinguish cleanly between your pain and someone else's. When they hurt, something in you responds as if you hurt too. This is why caring for others is genuinely depleting for you in a way others don't understand. They think you're tired. You're not just tired. You've been carrying weight that was never yours, in a body that didn't know how to put it down. If this already feels uncomfortably accurate, if you've spent years being everyone's anchor and wondered why you feel so permanently waterlogged, this channel exists for exactly that. You're welcome to subscribe. The next trait is the one nobody talks about out loud, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Trait 4. Somewhere along the way, you became the strong one, and the role quietly became a cage. Think about how it happened. It probably wasn't a single moment. It was the accumulation of small confirmations. People turning to you in crisis, people saying they don't know what they'd do without you, people leaning and you holding, and each time, something in you registered that this was your function, your value, your reason for being in the room. And so the strong one became not just something you did, but something you were. And the thing about being the strong one is that it comes with an unspoken contract. The strong one doesn't fall apart. The strong one doesn't need. The strong one holds the space for everyone else's pain and has nowhere to put their own. Psychology links this to what's called a survival identity, a self-concept built not from who you authentically are, but from the role that kept you safe, valued, and emotionally connected to the people you needed. In simple terms, being strong for others was the version of you that the world rewarded, and so that version became the only one you knew how to be. Your strength is real. It has always been real. The goal is not to stop being strong. The goal is to find the version of you that is allowed to be held, as well as to hold. It's late. You're somewhere quiet. Maybe a kitchen after everyone has gone to bed. Maybe a car you haven't gotten out of yet. And something happened today, something that hurt. Something that if it happened to someone you loved, you would have called them immediately. You would have sat with them. You would have made sure they didn't carry it alone, but it happened to you. And so you filed it away. Somewhere quiet, somewhere it wouldn't inconvenience anyone. And now it's late, and the house is still, and the feeling is still there. Smaller now, compressed, and you realize you don't actually know how to do for yourself what you do so naturally for everyone else. Not because you don't deserve it, but because you were never shown that you did. Trait 5. Your own pain gets processed last, if it gets processed at all. This is how it works when you're living inside it. Something difficult happens to you, and almost immediately, your mind does something quiet and automatic. It assesses whether this is the right time to feel it. Is anyone else struggling? Is this the kind of pain that deserves space? Is there something more useful you could be doing than sitting with this? And almost always the answer your mind returns is, not now. Psychology calls this emotional compartmentalization, the cognitive process of separating an emotion from conscious awareness in order to continue functioning. In simple terms, you have built a very efficient system for filing your own pain away so that it doesn't interfere with your ability to show up for others. The cost isn't just that your pain goes unprocessed, it's that over time, the compartments fill up. And the things you filed away don't disappear, they just get heavier. And there is one more trait, the last one. And it is the quietest and perhaps the most important. Trait 6, you were taught very early that your needs were the ones that could wait. This is not something anyone said directly. It was taught through the architecture of your earliest relationships, through the parent who needed comforting more than they comforted, through the household where your emotions were too much, too complicated, too inconvenient, or simply invisible against the louder needs of everyone around you. And so you learn to make yourself small in the emotional space to take up less room, to need less, to give more. Psychology calls this anxious attachment combined with chronic emotional self-suppression, a pattern where a person learns that their emotional needs are less valid, less urgent, less deserving of space than the needs of others. In simple terms, you didn't choose to make everyone else's pain a priority over your own. You were trained to by people who were doing their best with their own unhealed wounds, by a world that rewarded you for giving and rarely asked how you were and waited for the real answer. You are not endlessly strong because you have no needs. You are endlessly strong because somewhere along the way, you were taught that having needs was something you couldn't afford. You were never someone without pain of your own. You were someone who learned to be so good at holding everyone else's that your own had nowhere to land. That is not a character flaw. That is not emotional strength without limit. That is a pattern built by a person who needed to survive in a particular kind of world and survived it by becoming indispensable to everyone in it. Your capacity to hold pain is one of the rarest things about you. The work is not to stop holding. The work is to learn slowly, imperfectly, that you are also allowed to be held. That your pain is not an inconvenience. That the silence where your feelings should be is not emptiness. It is a space that was never given permission to fill. You were never broken. You were built to give in a world that forgot to give anything back. Which trait hit closest to home? Drop a number in the comments. Subscribe, you're in the right place.